Hello and welcome along to Disability in Fiction. This is a brand new workshop starting up on WordCamp here on this Discord server, and we are a fairly new Discord server. We're sort of the sister server of the famous Script Camp, which teaches you all about screenwriting, whereas WordCamp is about teaching you how to write novels and other prose sorts of things. So the two workshops, so about different topics, are very much the same in what we talk about, and we aim to write disabled characters in a way that's helpful to um, disabled people and to society as a whole, which sounds intimidating but isn't. Um, it's just about trying to make sure that there's good representation in the industries, in society, in the media, is what I'm trying to say, of disabled people. And so, yeah, the purpose of these workshops is to help you um, to do that in a way that's helpful and so on. Well, that's since February. It's March, but you know. So yeah, we welcome disabled and able-bodied people here. It doesn't matter what kind of disability you have, or if you're not disabled at all. We just want to help you write better disabled characters. This is a disability in fiction workshop, um, and these are the sorts of things that we'll be looking at. So we'll be looking at, we may be given sensitivity reading, so we'll read a few pages of maybe a scene or maybe two scenes. Uh, so that's screenwriting. But yeah, a couple pages maybe. But you're welcome to bring screenplays if you would like. Um, we'll be doing character analysis as well and building characters. And we meet every other Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. British time, except next couple of weeks when it be 3 p.m. British time, because the UK and America change time zones at different times for whatever reason. Um, yeah, 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. for Pacific and Eastern, respectively, next week for disability in screenwriting, will be 3 p.m. for British time. Um, and again, these are the things we'll be covering. Um, reviewing disabled characters from existing media, so a bit of TV and film, but books as well, or pretty much any piece of media. Sensitivity readings, showing disabled experiences that might help to make your disabled characters a bit more realistic, a bit more 3D, as you know what I say. Um, yeah, that's what we're doing. Um, Now, I've touched on this already, but in the media, there is already so much representation of disability. Unfortunately, however, a lot of that isn't good representation. There's a lot of negative representation that really does real harm to people. The example that I used last time was that I know a politician who has a disorder, and if they were out, if they told people about that disorder, they would be forced out of office. And so, you know, it's not their condition isn't dangerous to other people, but because of what people think about the disorder, because it's been portrayed badly, even used in horror films, um, people think, that's your life, unfortunately. And so, they have to be in a closet about their condition, otherwise they would lose their job. Um, and to some of us, that might sound crazy, but unfortunately, that's the reality for many people, for many disabled people, who quite literally have to suffer in silence to some degree. Um, people with disabilities can be the most represented and misunderstood minorities in the media, and sometimes in society. I went to an event for disabled people, which I'll cover in a little bit, a little later on. And it was interesting that even as a disabled person myself, I had internalized ableism that I was going, whoa, I get upset when it happens to me, and that society, in a way, has affected even me in thinking, um, thinking things that aren't true, believing misinformation, and all that sort of thing. Um, this last bit here is something I really like, the idea of people of any age, gender, religion, race, or socio-economic background can be disabled, and disability is the only minority that you can suddenly become a part of. Yeah, you never know. It might be, hopefully, hopefully not. But yeah, you could end up being disabled in the morning. You know, um, that has happened to many people. So I think it's important that there is that equality and that equity as well, in society. And I think a good place to start is in the media with that. Um, yeah. Uh, great. Is there anything you need help with? What's happened? Um, hello? Okay, okay. um, yeah. So, in order to have a safe environment, which we want this to be, we have put in some guidelines just to make sure that everyone is safe and happy. And yeah, this is a safe space for everyone, essentially. It's important that we are respectful to everyone, of course, not just in this workshop, but across the server. And we won't tolerate any insults. Um, we'll be very clear about that. We welcome questions. Now, this is a bit difficult for me and Willow and Natcha to sort of moderate, because I can tell you about some ridiculous questions that I've had as a disabled person, which, sometimes, have been really offensive, but have been asked in a genuine way. So it can be really difficult for us to moderate that. But I think the general rule is that as long as it's a genuine question with a good intent, will allow it. Um, if you have a disability that's been spoken about, say for example, we're talking about ADHD, and you have that condition, and you want to provide insight, or someone's asking about it, then we absolutely welcome that. I don't have ADHD, and so um, I'm sure that whoever's writing about ADHD will value your opinion. But of course, don't feel like you have to give that information. You don't owe anyone any information about your disability. So share if you're happy, but otherwise, don't worry about it. Um, if you want your so this PowerPoint is the exact same one that I used from last week, disability and screenwriting. But yeah, if you want your work read, then you will need to have given helpful feedback to someone. Again, this is a hard rule for us to moderate, but basically, as long as you're not just uh, taken, we've had a couple people just take in what they can and not giving back. So we want people to be given back in order to take. Yeah, so that's the idea behind that guideline. And again, we're all here to learn and improve. So keep an open mind and, be listening to each other, and respectful of everyone. Um, Now, different countries, this is something I found out recently. Different countries will have different definitions of disability. So I think in America, to have a disability, you have to be physically disabled, I think, or something like that. Here, that's not the case. For the purposes of this workshop, there are 5 types of disabilities, and they are all represented by this beautiful pride flag on the left. This is a disability pride flag, and you'll notice each stripe has a meaning or a category of disability: red for physical, yellow for intellectual, white for hidden disabilities, blue for mental health, and green for sensory. Um, and the idea is to sort of encapsulate or cover every disability. So whichever category or categories your disability or disabilities fall under, you're welcome or whichever you want to talk about, they are welcome here. So yeah, we're very open to everyone, is what I'm trying to say, I think. I've spoken a bit about the disability in screenwriting workshop, the first session of which was last week. Again, we alternate between the two servers, Script Camp and WordCamp. So that's every other week. And this, again, we cover disabled characters in your story. Very much the same thing. That one's more focused on TV and film and screenplays, whereas this one is pretty much any other media, mainly novels, but you can bring your screenplays or whatever other. We'll allow comics or whatever else you would like to bring. So let's get started then with today's session. Now we've got that out of the way. I wonder if anyone has anything they want to share with us today. Yeah, so yeah, it can be anything, whether it's a question about disability maybe, or if you've got any writing, it's fairly open.
Okay. Well, we don't have to talk about it right now if we don't want to, but I was wondering if we could talk about some something about an encounter I had where someone basically said, "Is it a disability if you have the option to not have it?" I believe you also encountered that.
Did I encounter that? Oh, yeah, it was kind of. Oh, I think I know what you're referring to. Yeah,
Yes.
if you want to talk about that, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts because clearly I don't I can't grasp how that would be true, but I did want to expand on what is wrong with that, just in case anybody here was wondering about it or
Yeah.
doesn't understand.
It sounds like a weird question. So let's start with what how we define disability. So disability is any condition that has a major impact on your life. Again, I'll refer back to my little graphic here of the 5 types or 5 categories of disabilities that we cover here, which hopefully are all inclusive. Um, but yeah, so and disability will have a major impact on your life. It might be physical, it might be just a difference in the way the brain works, but as long as it has a major impact on your everyday life. So, for me, for example, I am physically disabled, I'm a full time wheelchair user, and so that has a massive impact on, um, the clothes that I wear or how I get out and about, or, um, all aspects of my life. So I'm trying to think of another condition. Um, if you're partially sighted, that will affect again how you get around and lots of different aspects of your life. Now, the idea that I don't even know how to phrase it. Um, you can choose. You don't necessarily have a disability if you choose not to have. Is that how it was phrased?
I don't remember exactly. I feel like the option of treatment and accommodations for this, disability and stuff that might assuage some of the symptoms of such. I think we were talking about a neurodevelopmental disorder.
Yeah. So
But
I
yeah, the
think
idea was that that doesn't count.
it's such a weird question. I'm struggling to answer it. I've heard the
You're
saying
not talking
that
right
yeah, I want to try and tackle it. I can't even get my head around it for some reason. But yeah,
now.
I've heard the quote. Can't remember how it goes. It goes something along the lines of, for some disabilities, it's not necessarily the disability that limits you. It's the society for able-bodied people that limits you. Um, so again, I'll refer to myself because I have the experience of being myself. But as a wheelchair user, there's lots of stuff that I can do, and I'm very quote unquote able-bodied where I'm not. I'm very yeah, but there are lots of things that I can't do. So if there's stairs in a building, for example, then I'm going to struggle. It's the society that limits me. That's the idea that's sort of floating around about how it's society that limits you. And I think that might be true to some extent with a neurological condition like ADHD or autism, for example. Um, there are accommodations that other people can make to make your life easier. Um,
May I say something?
yeah, of
Mhm.
course, Amber.
So I'm also a full-time wheelchair user, and I'm also high functioning autistic. Although I don't like that definition, but I don't know how else to describe it. It
Yeah,
affects me mostly sensory. I've heard a lot of times the thing of I used to be a teacher, and it was taught in schools that people are only disabled because of society's limitations and all of that. And I kind of have issues with that in a way, because even if even if stairs were got rid of and there were ramps everywhere and there were lifts everywhere, like there's still the issue of being in a wheelchair, being lower than everyone else when everyone's standing around, or like just the fact that I can't run and jump makes me different. And like with the autism, like I'm pretty happy with my autism. Like I feel like sometimes it's a superpower, but like I know people for whom it is disabling, and I would never dream of saying that autism isn't a disability. Does that make sense? Like, I
yeah,
think it's in the eyes of the person who is disabled, not in the eyes of able bodied people who might want to make themselves feel better.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Um, I'm going to read Amanda's comment that she put here. I do think there's a misconception that certain mental illnesses could be resolved through effort or positive thinking. That's the only thing I can think of. Like certain kinds of conditions, like generalized anxiety disorder, can be mitigated through therapy. But ultimately, a person is not choosing to have generalized anxiety disorder, even if there are some things they can do to mitigate it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess there's a lot of cures or a lot of treatments and so on for different conditions. But until you've had those treatments, that if you do get those treatments, you're still disabled before those treatments have worked.
Right. And they just usually often mitigate it too. And it's like, yeah, I think that's the only example that I could think of that the person would have asked that question
Mm,
about. Like if you're choosing, like if you have a choice, it's like maybe they just know someone in their family where they're like, well, if only you thought positively, you could not be anxious. Or, I mean, and there's
yeah,
this real toxic positivity in society where people think they could just mind over matter things. And I think, yeah, I don't agree with whatever that person was
yeah,
implying, but I just was thinking, well, maybe that's why they asked the question. But, anyways,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's a good point. Absolutely. Um, People do think that you can kind of work your way around disability. You can find things that help, but I guess to some extent, if you're disabled, um, you know, it will always have some sort of impact. Um, that's what I would say, I guess.
I think okay, I think what I want to say about the mental illness, and
Mm,
I agree with you guys, by the way, the mental illness and neurodevelopmental things, anything that I don't know involves that area. Like, even if you find treatment and you get to a point that you quote unquote function like everybody else and no one can tell, I'm like, ah, what are you talking about? You don't, the hidden one sort of, but only hidden because you got treatment that not everybody else gets. It's still a disability because you had to fill stuff in and snip parts off to sort of mash yourself into a puzzle that wasn't built for you. And clearly you can't just choose not to have it. All you can do is like work around it because the world doesn't know to be more inclusive, I guess, in the way it functions. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up with chat because I forgot about chat. Natcha said, I'd like to share a great historical novel I'm currently reading, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Dewar, I think. The protagonist is a blind girl trying to survive during the Nazi invasion of France. First time I read a book with a blind protagonist that does a fantastic job of painting a vivid picture of all the scenes through sound, smell, and touch. Oh, that sounds like a good book because when you read books, it's mostly about what you see. So I would love to read that. Yeah. What's the other book I read? There was a really cool book I read about autism. I always get mixed up between autobiography and biography. It's written about an autistic boy, but the person who wrote it, it's a non-fiction book. The person who wrote it is the mum of the autistic boy. And it's called A Friend Like Henry. And how the mum struggles and eventually gets a dog for this child. And how that really changes everything, makes everything so much easier. So many lessons can be taught using a dog, like personal hygiene, washing, and it's time to eat. And because this boy was severely autistic, and so it was a really great book. I'd really recommend it to anyone who wants to do some research about autism because it's non-fiction as well. There's a lot that can be taken from it. Willow, going back to me, mind over matter. Willow says, "Trying mind over matter mentality is the reason I went years without knowledge or help." Yeah. Sometimes you do need that additional support. Yeah. Actually, I'd never considered that. The mind over matter can be harmful to some extent because you're just ignoring the problem until it builds and builds. And yet it needs some masking, which again is very emotionally difficult over a long period of time, and can do a lot of damage. Leads to a lot of self-blame for falling short.
Also on the mind over matter thing, there's the thing about when your condition is progressive. So I had this, and my brother also had it, where there's a negative view about if you need to use a wheelchair. So as your condition starts progressing and it gets to the point where you're starting to need to use a wheelchair, the society's view and the view of all the people around you are like, use it or lose it, keep fighting. Yeah. And I've got to be honest, I am happier since I have, in my case, I pushed it too much and fought against it too much and ended up in the hospital for 6 months and came out a full-time wheelchair user. And if I had accepted using a wheelchair before then, I would only be a part-time wheelchair user. But I am far happier and have far more energy being a full-time user than I ever did when I was fighting it. And my brother had Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is very progressive. And I look back at, like, for him, it was in his childhood, and I'm actually featuring a lot of this in my story because I've got a character who's got Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Because I look back at the way we were with him, like when he was a child, and I'm thinking, if we just let him enjoy his childhood, like, yeah, he would have been using a wheelchair rather than walking, but he would have had a much happier less, more pain-free childhood. So it's that kind of that attitude as well, where I think that society kind of views wheelchair bad, and it's not. It's
Yeah.
I love my wheelchair.
Yeah, mobility aids do give you that freedom, and that's not represented in the media. There's a lot of not bias. That's the wrong word. What people think that if people in, like you said, people in wheelchairs are worse off, or they're less than, or whatever, however it's phrased at the time. When actually mobility aids are there to actually give more freedom, and yet there's this view that they take away the freedom. Does anyone have any questions or any piece of work that they want to share or anything like that? We'll open the floor up again.
I have a very vague concept.
Okay, share it. Let's hear it.
In a fantasy feature I'm trying to write, we have there's all sorts of like fairy tale creatures on this island, like mermaids, fairies, gnomes, and stuff. And we have our main character who, like, she's a mermaid. Mermaids get around on land by putting on magic stockings to turn their fins into legs. And she has a friend who is a fairy but lost his wings in an accident. And I was wondering, since presumably, like, in the magic world, that is a disability, like, I don't know, it's still a vague concept, but if anyone had any ideas off the bat of, like, if I should address any issues with that or how to approach it, since I'm not terribly familiar with the world of physical disabilities outside some musculoskeletal stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If anyone has any comments about that, I've got a couple ideas. But if anyone wants to come in and say something there.
There's been a few instances of particularly like fairies without wings, and both of them ended badly. Like they started great and then ended badly. One of them was Tinkerbell's Secret of the Wings, and there was Lord. I think his name was Lord. His wing broke because he spent too much time. He's a winter fairy, and he spent too much time in the warm fairy area. His wing broke, and so now he's leader of the cold fairies, and he rides an owl. And honestly, he is pretty decently written. The problem with that movie comes that the main character, Tinkerbell, then that also happens to her when she spends too much time in the cold area, and then she gets cured at the end. But like the Lord Mallory, it's really cool seeing how he gets around without flying, as he has this snowy owl taking places. And then there was also the movie Fairytopia, and she's a fairy born without wings. Everyone else flies, she walks, and she has to go on a journey. And there are there you go. And there are scenes of her having to navigate a place that is completely designed for flying only. She grabs like a leaf and she uses it as a parachute. Things like that. But again, at the end of that movie, she gets cured and now she has wings. So I'd love to see. I want to see this non-flying fairy without them getting cured. And it has been done well, but it can be done better.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about why the getting cured trope is a bad one to use. Does anyone want to give any explanation or?
I could say something on that. This is only my personal experience, but it goes back to that whole same feeling society has of wheelchair bad. It's the whole that somehow we need to be fixed with our disabilities, that somehow we should want to be fixed and we can't be happy in our lives with disabilities. And for me personally, when I see films or read books where the disability is cured at the end, it leaves the feeling of I should be wanting a cure instead of accepting and enjoying my life the way it is. That's just a personal, that's my personal thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're 100% right. Yeah, that's why most disabled people don't enjoy that trope, because it just highlights or reaffirms the idea in people's heads that you are bad if you are disabled, or you're useless, or whatever words are used. You are inferior to able-bodied people, and you should be able-bodied in order to be a better person, which is just totally untrue. Yeah, so that's why I always recommend that people don't use that, because a lot of harm from it's caused a lot of harm to people. Yeah. Anyone got anything else for Gray?
I was just going to ask, do you think that our society is so unaccepting of difference that we always try to make people fit into a certain standard or pattern, and that the wing being healed is just to make that character fit into a pattern which doesn't really exist? We're all so unique, and I think for me, when my son was born with a disability, I entered a whole world that I didn't even know existed about special needs. But for me, everybody has special needs. It doesn't matter. And when you're writing, if those characters with disability are just powerful characters with their own unique abilities, surely that breaks down a number of the barriers that we find in society, that somehow or another, if your difference is obvious, then you're not normal. But normal is different. Does that make sense?
I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not true to real life when they do this, like, as we were saying, in the fantasy stories where the fairy gets wings in the end because they were good or a hero or whatever. They can now fit the ideal of what it is to be happy and triumphant, and that for some reason includes fixing that thing that was quote unquote wrong with them, because if they didn't get that fixed, supposedly they couldn't be happy. But it's just not true.
Yeah, it would have been stronger if in that story the others adapted their world so that the fairy without wings could get around more easily, and accepted the fairy who didn't have wings rather than the other way around.
And can celebrate the fairy's strengths without needing to fix the weakness. Because every single human being has a strength and a weakness, or multiple strengths and multiple weaknesses. And nobody gets fixed. We just learn how to use our strengths.
Yeah. Yeah, people have all sorts of different strengths and stuff, as you said. There's no need to fix anyone, you're right. Hmm. And Willow, while I was thinking about this, I don't think it's a disability, but you really hate the evil guy has a scar trope. And I guess I sort of thought of that because of this sort of karma-based idea that, like, when you are good, the thing society sees as wrong with you is fixed. Like, you've been the hero, and now that you've done this, like, well, no, that was all I had to say. But did you have an opinion on that, Willow?
Yeah, I admit I've got some major issues, and it's not specifically with the scar. The scar is part of it, but ugly people are bad. Pretty people are good. And what someone looks like is completely irrelevant to their character. There is some, could be cause and effect kind of thing. But for the most part, what you look like does not imply your character. In fact, I will be honest, some of the nicest, most wonderful, most empathetic people have been the not so pretty people, and some of the meaner people have been the prettier ones. And that is not that there is no definitive way either way, because morality and physical being are two completely different things. And so I hate it in movies where it's the ugly hag who tricks the beautiful and innocent Snow White, or any of those kind of tropes. And that does also go along with having some kind of a facial deformity, and like a scar. Like, how many people there's knights, and these heroes are all going out and getting into these major battles, and they don't have one single scar or scratch on their face, or it's in this delicately little spot that's hard, you don't even notice it, or it's or it adds to their beauty. So yeah, that is something. So
Willow, may I ask your opinion on a character I'm writing? Because I've gone the other way. I do have a horrifically disfigured person, but they're not the villain. They're actually a victim. They're a good guy. They are the parent that my main character is trying to find. Is that acceptable?
yes, I would say yes, because parentage doesn't matter what you look like.
Yeah. He's a good character. He's not a bad guy at all.
So yes, I would say I'm also writing. I have a nonverbal parent. Physicality. I don't know. But say what someone looks like does not define what their morality is.
Yeah. I think it's I write kids lit. Mostly I write upper middle grade, but I think that the whole ugly person bad is very prevalent in kids lit in particular. I mean, it's across all media, obviously, but it seems to be. I'm just thinking about some of the books I've read with kids lit, and it is something. It's something I'm going to be aware of because it is something that obviously I read the genre I'm writing and thinking about it. Yeah, the bad guy usually isn't the most attractive looking, and the hero is very attractive looking. So yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of.
If you were at all interested, we would love to see some of your writing or hear a few of your scenes if that was something you wanted to ever share.
I was going to add one little note to this because I feel like that ugly versus pretty aligning with the bad versus good, like definitely screwed with my head growing up. Like Cinderella, or like, what if you had big feet? You know, suddenly you identify with the ugly stepsister, right? And it's the ugly stepsister, right? And so, but then I was also thinking, because it's, you know, how they talk about externalizing the internal conflict. And so if somebody's ugly inside and you're trying to externalize it, I think I understand why people did that initially, because they were like, well, you know, especially before there was even speaking roles, right? They're like, well, how do I depict this guy's bad? Well, we'll make him have big furry eyebrows and, you know, red eyes. And, you know, they're kind of trying to, I don't know, I feel like, yeah, that's a tricky thing in the visual medium, because so often people are tempted to make it visually metaphorical. But I think, like, just to kind of note that, but then also realize the damage that does also if it's just done so much that, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. The whole thing is, this whole conversation is quite fascinating. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll bring any so bad about writing. Well, I'll bring any scenes containing him or relevant to this matter, or probably just want some of him existing, because like it's not really part of the story. It's just like a trait, as disability is in real life. It's just a trait. But yeah, if I come up with stuff and when, I'll come here to show you guys. But thank you for all this thoughtful discussion.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing that. If you would like, you can always use the disability chat channel in either ScriptCamp or WordCamp, and we can review stuff during the week, or you can post it there during the week, and then we can come and look at it on the Saturday in the sessions. Excuse me. North Paladin, are we able to ask questions about characters we're writing? Absolutely do. If you would like to unmute now, you are more than welcome to.
Okay, yeah, cool. Able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I'm really cool. It's really awesome that this whole workshop here is happening, because I know for a while now I've been really considering like how I'm portraying characters with disabilities. Especially recently, I've been working a bit on a fantasy story where the protagonist does have a disability. So I guess I just without going on like a whole tangent about what the actual like story is about, I would say the main character, it is yeah, they are the protagonist of the story that I'm referring to. They are an amputee, and they also deal with other like chronicle like sort of more chronic illnesses or chronic pain that they have to put up with in life, like how they have to, what they have to do to sort of and just like what the things they have to deal with on like a daily on a day-to-day basis, and how I'd be portraying that properly and respectfully. The main character also does have like psoriasis and stuff like that as well too, which is like, you know, a sort of common thing that people I feel don't really see. In I can't think of one example that I've ever seen in any story that I have or that I've seen where a character deals with psoriasis or other things like that. Whether or not psoriasis people believe it's an actual disability or not, like people I know in real life who do have psoriasis deal with it in different ways. So that's kind of a whole other thing. But yeah, they're also an amputee. They weren't born an amputee, but they did get it through like an act of violence that had occurred to them earlier in life before the story takes place. And so basically I'm just kind of wondering of like how I could portray a character like that. Because they are the protagonist, but I would also probably categorize them as a pretty morally complicated character. You know, I can go through it a bit more if need be of like their actual arc, but I would say they're a character who has a bit of bitterness about it. I would say if I were to really kind of break it down, I would even maybe say that the amputation of their leg is kind of maybe even seen as a reminder of some sort of failing, and I'd want to make sure that that's like not like a really kind of like bad thing to go about, because I also don't want to also like romanticize the idea of having an amputated leg as well too, or dramatizing it in any kind of way. And if I need to send any examples of like I have the intro or like kind of the first couple scenes of the character introduced and how they kind of deal with it, like what their life has been like now, because they're also just stuff like that. Because I hearing you guys everyone talk here about like hear how people talk about like a lot of characters with disabilities, scarrings, and stuff like that, being seen as more villainous or more sort of like I think how you guys were putting almost just like ugly in appearance, ugly by heart, which is obviously not the case with how real people in the real world work. So yeah, they are the protagonist of my story, but I would also say they're a very morally complicated character, often sometimes doing very questionable things in the scope of the story. But yeah, basically I'll just kind of throw it out there. If I need to clarify anything, just let me know. Of like, I guess the idea of like portraying a character who is morally complex, who occasionally does bad things, but you know, also like the fact that like they probably would carry some bitterness about this situation they find themselves in the world, including their amputation, but also being able to portray that respectfully.
Yeah. We'd be more than happy to see anything that you've got if you're happy to share. I think it's interesting that sorry, my screen's flashing. I think it's interesting that you've got this idea of an amputee who every time they look at their amputation is reminded of a failure. I think that's a really interesting thing to have, and I think that could make a good art. Maybe to see that transition between how they see themselves and how they see themselves as bad to accepting their situation or accepting their disability or so on. So I think that'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah,
Anyone got
okay.
any
Oh, sorry.
ideas for yeah, I was just opening it up. Anyone got any ideas for North Paladin here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and having some resentment is a perfectly natural like reaction to an acquired disability. I think it's important to remember that at the end, having them come around to accept it is a good part of that arc, because while them being magically cured is a damaging trope, I think a more damaging trope is the whole. I can't remember what the film was, but it was one where the guy was disabled, and at the end he basically killed himself because being disabled means you're better off dead, and that kind of thing. That's kind of a worse trope, if that's whatever, a more damaging trope, shall I say? That kind of thing of that. It's fine if you have a character who has that natural, like, I mean, sometimes I feel useless because I can't do something in the chair. That's a normal reaction, but I think it's helpful that by the end, it's kind of part of the development growth where the character comes to accept it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's no part in the story where the character is magically cured and it's like, hey, here's your leg back. Your life can go back to how it used to be and all cool and perfect or anything. Nothing like that happens. There's sequences where actually I would even say that the main character, does accept what has happened to them. And I think one of the big things too in the story, I'll also kind of add on there, this is a story that is also talks about a lot of themes revolving around the effects of colonialism. That is how this character lost his leg, was in a battle, essentially defending his home from a colonial force. And he lives the rest of his life now with a prosthetic leg that is a sort of a crude rusted iron prosthetic leg, where like the buckles are uncomfortable. It is not suited to him. It is, basically it was not meant for him. It is just kind of whatever sort of junk was left around that was given to him after the fact of his island being colonized. But later on in the story, I do have a thing where he gets a more, I guess I'll say like kind of custom prosthetic leg, I suppose. But it was more specifically like to sort of like not just like specifically be a part of like acceptance of his leg, but also the fact that like the leg itself is actually would be carved in a very traditional manner in the culture that he is brought up in. It's a leg that is also made specifically for him. It's kind of, it's sort of one of those sort of moments there where it's like he's like, okay, he lives with this now, but it doesn't need to hold him back in the way that it was almost meant to in the eyes of the people who would see him as lesser in this sort of colonial society.
That sounds very interesting.
Alright, anyone else got anything for Paladin? If not, we will open floor to everyone again.
Excuse me, what was that?
Oh yeah, just open advice for North Paladin. I don't know if you were here at the time.
I don't think I was.
No worries. If that's everything, then we'll open the floor back up again to anyone with any ideas about how to improve, any ideas for disabled characters, or if there's a scene in writing with disability in it, or anything like that.
Planning on making one of the characters in my in my series like hard of hearing. It's sort of just like, they got like a hearing aid and things like that. But apart from that, I guess I don't really know if there's anything much I would need to keep in mind for a character like that. You know what I mean?
Okay, cool. I mean, with any disability, there are always different things that you can add on. You know, different experiences or the way they do different things. Also, you mentioned that they're hearing impaired. That's a
Yeah.
outdated term. The term that's now used is D/deaf.
It's what? Excuse me?
So I typed it in chat, D/deaf, or deaf, however you want to say it. But it refers to the capital D is for people who tend to be born deaf and are part of the deaf culture, whose first language is sign language and so on. And the lowercase d is for you know, how you would describe hearing impaired, or people who use a hearing aid or maybe have lost their hearing, you know, after learning to talk or whatever. But yeah, just wanted to let you know about that. Hearing impaired is an outdated term.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah, no worries. That's fine. Again, the media does that. Well, there's lots of outdated terms used, so yeah. Yeah, so to agree, acquired deafness would be lowercase deaf as opposed to uppercase deaf. If you're born deaf, you would probably be uppercase deaf. Yeah. Let me see if I can find the website. There was a link that I had somewhere. Yeah, so yeah. If I'm understanding, yeah, go ahead if you want to ask anything, North Paladin.
Oh, I was just reading what Quinn had said in the chat. And
Okay.
I think I know. Yeah, I think I know what they were talking about, of like intersectional identities, and like a character being like a character having a disability, but also having other aspects of their like of who they are that would kind of put them in another like group of like marginalized individuals and stuff like that, I suppose, right? Like, you know, I again, like I can't like I guess sort of like wondering about characters who I suppose are from different backgrounds but also do have a disability. I guess yeah. And that's what Quinn was meaning. And I was actually gonna sort of talk about that too a bit. Specifically with my own like story idea, because the character that I was referring to in question is you know, is a non-white character who is in a, you know, a colonial society, who, you know, already right off the bat, like that's already like a kind of a big struggle that he deals with, on top of having a disability in said society where they might not, or they may or may not really look at that kind of stuff and like be completely like accepting of it in that kind of you know, day and age, I suppose, right? So that's kind of what I was thinking with, like, when Quinn said intersectional identities. That's kind of what came to my mind, is other characters with disabilities who are a part of other marginalized
Yeah,
groups as well too.
can I say on that? That is like a worry that I have with my own writing, because I write for like upper middle grade and lower YA. I have a very limited amount of word count, and so I find that I end up just picking one thing, like the disability, where I might want to make it a bit more complex with other like, you know, other things going on as well. And I worry about overcomplicating. And I just wanted like other people's opinions on that.
Yeah, Quinn, would you like to unmute and maybe ask a question about that?
Yes, I'm not the only one who has a worry about it. Everyone else does. I just read Grey Ghost's comment. Yeah, it is a problem is if there's like too much going on, people then get really like pick a topic. I've been told that pick a group and stick with it.
It's actually really funny because there's like a joke that I heard like some of my buddies like will see like something like typically like a more like I guess studio level sort of film or whatever will kind of have like a rule of two or whatever where it's like you'll have a character who's like, oh okay, well they're a person of color and a woman and LGBTQ plus. It's like, nah, you could pick one, maybe two, but it can't be about all of them. All right, like pick a topic, and it's like, come on, like their character, they're human. Yeah, it's like exactly right. Yeah, it's like like a character can be more than one thing. I guess obviously, like I'm sure most of us here are probably aware of that concept, but yeah, I think seeing characters who do have more than one thing, I suppose, is a bit more uncommon because of that exact mentality. But I suppose that's why I wanted to sort of talk a bit more on the intersectional identities because, I would like to also write characters who, have, reflect a lot of people in the real world, of course, and often that means people don't have just one identity in the real world, right? There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the issues that that I've been facing as well. Diversity can be a minefield.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it would be I don't know. It is a weird thing to like have to feel any need whatsoever to like limit yourself as far as the amount of uh I guess different ways that the character could be, I guess, put down, you know what I mean? Like oh, not only are they like a minority group, they're or part of a minority group, but they also have so and so disability and they're this and that, and it's like isn't it supposed to be hard for the character, you know what I mean? I don't know, that's just my opinion on it. It's like yeah, exactly, Joel. Um Multiple disabilities. That's wild. But it shouldn't be. Like what?
I actually had someone say that one of my characters was very unrealistic because she was a type 1 diabetic autistic and that's not possible. And I'm like, hi, I'm a type 1 diabetic autistic who also in a wheelchair, so it's possible.
Like what do they like like other people out there who think like, oh, you already got like one of those, so like you can't have another one actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, on that topic, I'll mention a show that has been really, really popular is Arcane, and I have not actually watched it, but I did watch a video about it and the criticism, and it was really interesting to hear or to see the the blowback in the comments against what they said, and they eventually took the video down. But apparently one of the characters, he walks with a cane and he's got this awful cough. he's got an issue with his legs and he's got an issue with his lungs. And he injects some kind of a serum into his legs and can now run. So how exactly did injecting his leg with something fix his lungs in order to be able to run? And that's what the person in the video was saying, and the comments were full of comments arguing, well, it fixed it. They didn't see it as two completely different issues, that the lungs would be completely separate from the leg. Just an interesting note.
That's really interesting. There's a lot of things like that I've seen where I'm like, because they just do some research and you could be more realistic, and then most people aren't bothered about it. But I'm sort of like, yeah, that's not very realistic. I'm an uber researcher whenever I put anything into any of my stories, even if it's my own lived experience. This character of mine that has muscular dystrophy, well, my brother passed away like 15 years ago, so I've done research because things have moved on since then. And I lived that. I saw him, I looked after him, but I'm still doing the research because my experience with him might be different to like someone else's experience with the condition. And I think that's important as well. Own voices are important, but even with own voices, we do need to research. I learned that with the type 1 diabetes because I'm British, and in Britain we're taught to carb count, so we eat what we like and we give ourselves insulin accordingly. Whereas in America, it's due to the cost of insulin, you're more likely to find people who are low carbers and eat a lot less carbs. And so the biggest criticism I got was about my character eating carbs, who was type 1. And I'm kind of like, it's set in Britain, like she's not a type 2. But actually it sort of then made me really emphasize that, Britain's different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly like that. And I think that's where we as writers have that chance to, I don't get these ideas out there. So I'm loving this conversation, and it's very interesting that so many of us, if not all of us, have seen the exact same kind of problems in media, be it books or TV.
Let's go back to who was it, Quinn, who wants to talk about relationship ableism. And I think there was also a bit about Hollywood said told me there was no people of color with a disability. So that's two very different topics. So we start with the interabled relationships. That's an interesting one. There's a belief that an able-bodied person can't date a disabled person for whatever crazy reason that an able-bodied person will have to explain to me because I will never understand it. But yeah, apparently that's not a thing. Anyone got any comments to sorry about the noisy motorbikes? Anyone got any thing they want to say about interabled relationships?
Um, I I I guess you're talking more on the intersectional, like but something that we also never see um in media is a disabled person being a love interest, that they are uh that they are attractive, that they are desirable.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very interesting point. It's almost like it's if ever there is dating, it's like a pity thing almost. I've seen that sometimes, particularly in YA sick lit, which I really don't like. It becomes like a pity thing rather than it being like you say, like actually that person's attractive. Like, yeah. Oh, you got me thinking about my story now.
Yeah, that's good. I guess we want everyone to be, thinking about their story in a different way.
I'm actually wondering if I should introduce, because mine's this particular one I'm doing is lower YA, and I do have a boy and a girl character who have become really good friends, and the boy does fancy the girl. I'm actually wondering if maybe I do continue down that path.
I well, haven't seen your story. Would absolutely love to see it, but I say go for it. Like, there's not enough romantic subplots with disabled
Yeah.
people in a positive light. Yeah, usually when I do see it, it is more on the special butterfly kind of
Yeah.
thing. Just two people who enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be going in too deep in the romance because it is lower YA. I normally write middle grade, so you don't have any romance at all. I'm brand new to the server. I literally joined for this. I saw this being advertised in the script one. That's why you haven't seen anything that I've done. But I'm very keen to get involved in this server. In fact, this server is probably better for me than the script one because although I am a screenwriter by trade, by training, it turns out my career is sort of going into the novel side because I've got for this particular thing I'm writing, I have a first look deal with a big British publisher, which is really scary, and I'm sort of writing it for them. So the fact that it's YA does give me scope for a little bit of a tiny romance subplot. It can't be very big at this stage. The boy's only 12, so.
Cool. But yeah, I saw. So I went to I want to say film festival. It wasn't a film festival, but I don't know if you've heard of a BFI or British Film Institute. I went to an event by them yesterday, which was a group of disabled filmmakers and screenwriters, and we saw a couple of short films, and there was one showing an interlabeled relationship, and I guess antagonist.
For
was
context, if I may, what is interabled? Because I don't believe I know what that.
So that is a relationship where one person is able-bodied and another is disabled.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a disabled model and an and the assistant at the model place, whatever you call that, the studio rather, and yeah, the owner of the studio accuses this assistant of taking advantage of a helpless disabled girl, and it was about sort of again, hey, this disabled person isn't helpless or whatever. It was really good to see. But yeah, so I've got my point now. I'm sorry, I've completely lost what I was saying. Can someone remind me what I was saying? I'm really sorry.
I think we were talking about the representation of like able-bodied and having better representation of able-bodied dating, and I said about it being that sometimes when they are dating, they're looking like it's more of a pity thing. So I think your point of them actually making a point on that short film of the fact that two people can date and it's not somebody taking advantage was
yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a healthy representation of interable relationships.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it'd be good to see more representation of disabled people having relationships. And there's a couple of YouTubers who are in an interabled relationship, and they show what it's like. People assume that she, the able-bodied person, is his carer, or these sorts of things, or their brother and sister. And every time that they tell someone else that their husband and wife, whoever's speaking to him, their jaw hits the floor. I mean, it's like, what? And people think that she's in it for his benefits, or all these different things. It's for some people, it's like, what can she find attractive in a disabled person? Or they think that their relationship is like a child relationship, or it's not a full sexual and romantic relationship, or whatever. So it'd be good to that's basically what I'm trying to say is it'd be good to see an interabled relationship, or two people who have a disability in a relationship that is a relationship, an adult relationship. I know you can't do that in a YA book, but yeah, I would encourage that, to see a relationship that's age appropriate for the characters. So if you're writing a 12-year-old, for example, show a normal relationship. You know?
This might be a complete non sequitur, and stop me if it is, but it reminds me of some script we were reading through on the script camp server of it was about a woman with orthorexia, and that sort of played into the plot a little bit, I think. And she had a girlfriend who, in addition to like trying to help her through the mental aspect, who they went out to some restaurant with friends in the first bit, and the girlfriend could see that our main character was all fidgety and nervous, and so she went ahead and ordered, like, the stuff that the main character usually gets, just like some something that aligns with it's a safe food for her. And some people in our feedback, the writer clearly wasn't there, it was a blacklist script. But some people were saying, oh, what a good girlfriend. She knows that, like, she knows her limits, and she knows, to sort of not bring it up if she's uncomfortable. And other people were saying, well, that's sort of infantilizing, isn't it? That she wouldn't let her make her own order and just sort of swooped in and sort of fed into it. But does that pertain to this at all? And if it does anyone have any strong thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is absolutely linked to this, and
I think Gray
yeah.
disappeared.
Oh. You did? Great. Gray's still here.
I'm still here. You can't get rid of me.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm blind. Actually, though, legally.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. How do you judge if something is infantilizing, and also how do you show that in the media? Because in a scene like that is difficult to show. Anyone got any ideas for that?
Mm, I kind of just have more of like a I guess something that I've been ruminating on for a little bit that I think is pretty similar. But I don't know. I guess it feels a bit weird. Like I guess to always have like the disability act as like this like plot issue type thing where like it's like a big thing that they have to overcome either over the course of the entire plot or like they have to overcome it for like a scene or two. And I don't mind those things happening. It's just like I don't know what if this is like a necessarily like a good or bad thing, but like having characters who just have these disabilities and things without it being like such a like a big like issue, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um
sorry.
like casually someone who is like who uses a wheelchair or like has a hearing aid or like etc etc. You get what I mean? Like I guess I don't know where the border is between like acting like it can't be an issue and like wanting to not make too big a deal of it because it is kind of a normal thing that people do go through. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually can answer that from the point of view of my knowledge of parts of the publishing industry in the UK with the contacts I've got. Part of the reason why I won the award that I did that leads to the uh, first look deal with the publisher is that I write adventure stories or mysteries or whatever that happen to feature a person with a disability. I mean, there are a lot of books out there that are about the disability, but I specifically like books that are about something else and you have a disabled character. I think it's important to show the um have the disability, like show things to do with the disability. So as an example, my character's in a wheelchair, the other character just goes somewhere where there's stairs and he's disappointed that he can't actually go with them, but he hides the disappointment because it's in his character. And then the fact that he couldn't go meant he's able to alert them the alarm's gone off, so it kind of has a plot point, but it's not like I could have found another way for him not to have gone and not have him in a wheelchair. Do you know what I mean? I think it's nice to have stories that, just like we have stories that people just happen to be gay in or happen to be black in or things like that. I think it's nice to have it show the world. And just on that, I don't know if any of you have seen Seeing Red, the Disney Pixar film where she turns into a big red panda. There was a very small in the background clip. Turning Red, that was it. Yeah, thank you. There was a very small in the background, blink and you miss it clip of the kids are walking down the street, and on the bus there was someone in a wheelchair with a lift on the bus that was getting them into the bus. And it's a tiny little thing, but I got so excited because it's like an animator actually thought about including that. And it wasn't like, oh, let's put the camera on it and make it really focused. It was just in the background. Most people wouldn't even notice it. And I got so excited because I'm like, yes, like it's there.
Yeah, and there's another girl as well, as Lizanne says, who had diabetes and was shown by having a
Yes.
Dexcom.
I saw that too.
Yeah. I got really excited about that as well.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to see that because as disabled people, I'm glad I'm not the only one in this. But when I see someone in a wheelchair, it's like, yes, I'm being represented, I'm being seen, and it's wonderful to see that. We'll read Pure, I think, next week in the screenwriting, disability in screenwriting, just A, because it's a script, and B, because we're like, I don't think we'll have enough time for it this week. Yeah, anyone got anything to... Anyone got... anyone get any media for... I've suddenly forgotten how to talk. Any media for us to look at that they've created, anything they've written, or if it's a comic maybe, and you want to share that.
I will say I do need to go soon because I do have a deadline and I'm meant to be writing right now, ironically.
No worries at
So
all.
what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to still be here and listen, but probably not talk as much. So don't worry if I suddenly stop talking.
Yeah, no worries at all. We're finishing soon anyway, so Winner has a comic. I would be very interested to read that. And while you post that, I will get the links for next week, which I was meant to do already. Just posting in the chat the link for next week if you would like to join. Where it's a very similar workshop, but we particularly focus on screenwriting, and here we focus on any other type of media. While we wait for Willow to post the comic, anyone else got any media for us to quickly look over? I mean, I think that will finish us up for this week.
I might have a little something here. It's like the introduction to the protagonist of my story.
Okay, sure. You can post that if you want.
Now,
go on.
yeah, I'm just trying to wonder if I should send because I wrote it originally as like a script, but it was like way back when I was a bit more beginner. But I'm also but I wrote it again in prose, but I'm also pretty beginner at prose. I don't know. It's basically both versions of this intro I have not been touched in a long time. But yeah, I can send it anyway. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I'll just one moment. Maybe I will send I could possibly send the script version. I'll just take a look and see what I got. I'll just need like a minute.
All right. Oopsie.
Okay. I mean, if we got time, they're both really quick. I could just maybe even send both. Not to take up too much time, obviously. I mean, but like, they're like the script in question I'm talking about for the character's intro is like maybe a page and a half altogether. Of a screenplay.
We'll start with one
Yeah,
because Willow wants to share as well.
yeah.
So
So
press
yeah,
whichever one you want to like.
yeah, like I said, it's been a long time. It's been a while since I've taken a look at these. I would say, yeah, it's all pretty beginner writing because I wrote this pretty early on in my career. But since I've recently been revisiting this story, I thought I'd go back and just look at these really early scenes. So the pages that I'm talking about is just beginning of Act 1, which is just page 3 to page 4 about. So yeah, just about two pages. If you want to just like skim through that really quickly.
Yeah, sure. Shall we do a bit of a table read here? Great, I'm going to steal your format. Let's get let's let me have two characters with similar names.
Yeah, did you want me to help with any pronunciation at all of the two characters' names?
I don't think any of us say it, but sure.
No, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, sorry. You can take it from here. If you're just looking for people to read it, I'll just listen. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, you listening. Let's have Winner. You would like to read? You can get you can take my name beginning with double AN. That's how we're going to pronounce it. And can I get some notes to read? You would like to volunteer to read a couple lines?
Hello.
Hello. Yes. You can get the welcoming. You can get the Zoo. Oh my goodness. One ending in YET. I'm bad at speaking in general, but yeah.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
Wait, is this the right script? The CLATWA. That name? Is that what I'm doing?
You're doing the one ending in YET.
Yeah. Also, sorry. Yeah, this was before I realized I could just like make things look easier on the page. The voice that shows up in the dialogue is Hulsiet's voice, so that's the same character.
Okay. So you are voicing Hulsiet.
Okay, wait. Oh, it's
okay.
Is this it up here?
I'm going to show it on the screen.
Oh,
okay.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
So the whole scene with the introduction of these two characters, which are basically the two main characters of the story, goes till page 5, and then it ends at that scene heading at Interior Sietz's house day. So that's the length of the scene with the introduction of the main character.
We'll just read a page and a bit, or a couple of pages, I think it is. Alright then. And does anyone want to read direction?
I can read direction.
Cool, thanks, Gray. Taking your
Take
normal
my
job as
throne.
always.
You try to usurp?
Here we go. Take it away, Gray.
Alright. And we're going from, okay, top of page 3. Act 1. Interior Dingy Hut, day. Wait, Dingy Hut, day, 300 years later. Cool Sean, 45, wakes in a panic. He takes a moment to catch his breath. His eyes adjust to the light shining through the many cracks of the walls. As his breathing slows down, he slowly opens his dry eyes. He looks up to the ceiling. It's still damp from the previous night's drizzle. A single drop falls on his face. He lets out an exhausted sigh. Another day in his body. Fulshan turns its head to look at the well-maintained dagger strung up by its sheath on the wall. He lifts himself up on his bed. His body still adjusts to the motion. A groan escapes when it shuffles to the edge of the bedside. He looks over to his false leg leaning against the bedside. Now came the hard part. He reaches to grab his leg and puts it on. The crude iron is cold against his palm.
Rusty piece of.
He grumbles to himself as he tries to get the straps around his stump. Just as he gets one on, another comes undone. Whoever designed this had it out for him, it seems. Trying to keep the leg on as well as himself sitting up is a grueling task. Sweat builds on his reddened face. The rest of his body wasn't even done aching.
Sean, are you awake yet?
Steps come closer to his hut. Damn it.
Just give me a second.
He tries to quickly put it on with one last stretch. He cannot hold himself up anymore. He falls back into bed, catching his breath. He wasn't the fit young man he once was. Tulsiet, 40, his sister, dressed as if she could be a northern noblewoman, a far cry from Sultan's weathered worker's clothes, pushes aside the ripped up curtain in the doorframe. She looks to her brother lying on the bed.
I told you to just wait.
It's long past time to get up. Come on, you only have so much time to see her before your shift starts.
Tulsiet goes and picks up the leg.
No, stop.
Kulshan lifts himself straight back up. He tries to take the leg from Tulsiet.
Sean.
I can do it myself.
Yes, I'm well aware, but you need to hurry. Now settle down, it's just me.
Kulshan scoffs, clearly quite annoyed, but surrenders to his sister. She quickly belts in the straps around, securing the rusty leg. She stands back up. Tulsiet tries to extend an arm out to Kulshan. He pretends to not notice and gets up on his own, straightening out his back. He moves past his sister, grabbing his old cane leaning on the doorframe, and a nearly empty bottle of whiskey from a crate written Howland Trading Company. He walks through the ripped curtain. Tulsiet watches her brother. She follows him out of the hut. Well, I pronounced the names different ways each time, so I hope one of them was right. Thank you for
I
sharing.
thought it was a K at first. It's okay.
Thank you very much. I've got
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for reading. Again, sorry for the very beginner writing. This was done quite a few years ago now. But yeah, I just wanted to get some. Yeah, I figured if I was gonna workshop something, I figured this sort of thing would be pretty suitable to like understanding a bit more of writing a character like that. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Any initial feedback from any of you about the script?
Say the writing is absolutely beautiful. I love the writing. Novelistic
wow.
for format.
Sorry?
A bit novelistic for script format. Like we can't
Yes.
see his pain. We see the effects of his pain, but his frustration and I thought that part was really well written, and particularly his dialogue and the way that he reacts to his sister, I thought was really good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is a bit too novelistic. It definitely spills into prose writing at times, which I had noticed right off the bat going back to it, and I was like, all right, well, might as well and see what's going on anyway. But yeah, it's definitely I definitely really want to get a feel for the actual character himself, his attitude towards his sister helping, and just the whole like exchange between these two characters in their introduction. Because so just all that sort of stuff is what I'm kind of really hoping to see if it works, what's good about it, what could be changed, just kind of stuff like that, I suppose.
Yeah. Let's go down the list. Amanda, did you have anything?
I was paying attention for the I read the whole first page on my own before you read it out loud. because my volume's been a little low. But I thought it was well written novelistically. So I think I'm echoing Willow's comment about, like, I thought it read well, and I thought that describing the sort of irritation about putting on the cold of the metal. I mean, it was very visceral, and I thought it was pretty good. Maybe not necessarily in exactly script format. And then, yeah, just I don't, and it didn't seem like it was like he was complaining like too much. Like, it just felt like a very kind of, yeah, this might be the way someone experiences that. I don't have the experience of that, but yeah. So that was my initial take off of the first page.
Thank you, Amanda. Amber, do you have any feedback? I don't think Amber said she would.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to bring it back. Yeah, I typed it into the thing. I found that I didn't think there was anything offensive in that, because I know that North, you were specifically asking if you'd messed up anything with representation of the character. I don't think you did. The frustration he feels real. To me, it doesn't feel offensive or overdone or anything like that. That was the main thing I was focusing on, because that was the bit that you asked about. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to see more of this character and where he goes with his journey.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Gray.
I'll just read what I typed. I said, Soulshot, just forgive me. Soulshot's frustration really
No
came
worries.
through, and he's clearly indignant towards his sister's attempts to help to get on that. I would suggest less telling an implication of his feelings towards the leg in the action lines, because what happened speaks for itself already. Already made clear how much frustration goes into even getting it on, and the details of it just not being a very happy thing for him right now. It's just a struggle, and him being frustrated with his sister trying to help. But yeah, don't think we need stuff like, whoever designed it had it out for him, and another dance body, and all this stuff. But yeah.
Thank you, Gray. Jay, do you have any feedback? Alright, man. Lasagna, do you have any feedback?
I think no one else has said, so no.
Alright, that's cool. Paul, any feedback?
Nothing specific about the subject that you wanted feedback on, just that it reads pretty well. And of course, like everyone else is saying, it's like can be cut down a little bit. But apart from that, I think that I didn't see any glaring issues. So I think that you're good as far as like at least the representation of this character goes. I don't think they were really done wrong, in my opinion.
Cool. And Willow, anything from you?
Actually, yes. Not really a critique on the writing. I've already said that, but something that I have struggled with the prose of this section, the frustration really comes through. We see why he's frustrated. We can feel his frustration. Now, the thing with screenwriting, I think it works perfectly in a novel. Thing with screenwriting is we need to see that exact frustration without any of the internal description of what he's experiencing and feeling.
Yeah.
And that is something really, really difficult to balance.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously this isn't the place to do that, where I can show off of how I've grown as a writer since writing this first scene. But no, I mean, I completely agree. And just for that exact reason, I did rewrite this scene like about a year, 2 years ago, in prose. I sent it in the Google Doc there. It is still pretty beginner prose, as I don't really write a lot of prose. Mostly just screenplays these days. But it's there. And yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think fair critique, honestly, as well too, of just not having those sort of things in the action description.
I find that something that is makes it writing disabilities all the more difficult. The characterization, at least for me, is not a problem, but at least I have a really bad problem of how do I describe what this person is doing without going overboard into too much detail, or it's such a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's kind of the main thing of like, I'm glad I had the chance to show this character off in this way, because that's definitely the main thing, is making sure like things like his frustration, and his sister coming to help him out and stuff like that. Like, it's like, hey, we got to get going, kind of thing. Like, making sure all those things work and are presented in a realistic fashion, right? Like, if his frustration being justified, even to an extent of like, obviously I can't do a character deep dive on him right now, but I mean, I would say for a portion of this script, he is also someone who is bitter and to an extent angry at certain in certain ways at the world and stuff like that, and people he may feel is responsible for his situation, I guess. Because we talked about that a bit earlier, of like intersectional identities and stuff like that, and I feel like this is a character that really, where that's definitely the case. The fact that he is an amputee is just kind of one of the many things that could be seen as, and I don't know if this is improper language, but kind of could be seen as something that's holding him back in this world and in this type of setting. Because yeah, like that is just one of many things that in this world that kind of put him at a disadvantage compared to other characters who are not him, I suppose.
In this series, in this book, will he learn to like accept it or something? Or what's the goal for him?
So I think he gets to a part in there's a point in the story where he definitely comes to terms with it a bit more, I suppose. And I kind of mentioned it a bit earlier, and I can go into it a bit more as well. But I see that like we're running it a bit out of time here. But yeah, like any other thing about that, like that idea of him accepting what happened to him and how his life is now, that definitely does come up in the story to an extent. It may not be an exact thing about his amputation, but it does revolve around that and many other things as well too, because like I was saying, his amputation is just one of many things that he has to put up with in a world that is not very kind, I suppose, right?
Okay. I'm sort of making sure it's not like this thing I saw where it's like, oh no, I have a disability. I cure it, and then at the end he cures it. I was just hoping it wasn't like that.
Yeah, we talked about that actually a bit earlier, and yeah, there's no part in the story where like some magic being shows up and is like, I'm gonna cure you of your missing a leg. Like nothing like that ever happens. I would say that I would say the fact that he is an amputee, that is a part of who he is. But again, like I was saying, that's just one of many aspects of him, because we did talk a bit about that subject of like a character can just be more than one thing. Because that's how most human beings are in the real world.
Yeah. Hey, I think you're doing a good job. Good job.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Doing well.
Thank you, Lasagna.
No problem.
I think I've asked everyone who is available. I think we're going to wrap it up here. And yeah, we will be back same time next week for on Script Camp for our screenwriting version, disability in screenwriting. A week after, back here on WordCamp for disability in fiction. Again, we're very much the same classes, just one is more focused on screenwriting. And yeah, be sure to bring any scenes that you have with disabled characters or come with questions. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all then.
Thank you for putting this group on. I definitely am really appreciative of getting feedback on these aspects of these characters and stuff like that. Because they're things I've considered before, but have not quite been able to really check them out in a deep way, kind of like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for this as well. It's a nice way to get to know you all, and I'm also looking forward to getting involved in the server as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also pretty new to WordCamp. I mostly am active in the Script Camp Discord.
Yeah,
I joined that one as well. Literally today. That's how I knew to join this one.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm a prose writer and a screenwriter, so.
Mm-hmm. I definitely need to practice more prose though, so this is probably a good server to be in, because I'm so incredibly rusty in prose writing.
yeah, we're doing a novel boot camp, I think, in a few hours.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
What's that involved?
So, a prose screenwriter will take you through the process of writing a novel. I think I'm right in saying it's 12 weeks long. I don't know. Can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe it's I don't know. Come along and find out. And it'll be in the classroom channel at the top of the channels list in WordCamp. And yeah, he'll just help you through writing a novel. So hopefully you learn some stuff from that. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Awesome. See you later.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for the notes and reading the script. Thank you. I really appreciate that.